Straight after this, we'll be talking to the economist Jonathan Davis. You know he's a wealth manager. He's been tweeting about this today. Would he like to see bankers behind bars? Now, you know Jonathan of old. I cannot promise that once you've heard him speaking, you will feel better about yourself or your life or more optimistic, but you may simply be thumping the table and thinking that guy knows a great deal about what he's talking about. We'll see what you think of him. He's coming after this.
BBC London 94.9.
What is it you want to say to Si?
I'd like to say thank you to Si.
Weekday afternoons with Joe Good.
My husband is a young 64-year-old and he doesn't dance. When Gangnam Style comes on, you cannot get him down again.
We've got the man himself, Dizzy Rascal. Welcome.
What's happening?
Joe Good.
Jesse, welcome. To the afternoon show. Hello. You said that's
It was very intense, that last few seconds of that song.
You don't realise how handsome you are.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. You never told me you were so pretty, actually.
Oh, thank you. I have the lights very low.
Right.
But I'm wearing my best shoes.
What? Stunting on them.
Weekday afternoons from 3.
Oh, I love him so much.
On BBC London 94.9.
And he said I was pretty.
She is. She's very pretty. Let's talk to Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth manager. Hello, Jonathan. Good morning.
Good morning, Vanessa.
So these are, I mean, you could say these headlines are music to some people's ears. Bankers should face threat of jail. They think, yes, why aren't they already in prison? What do you make of it? Is there any likelihood that bankers will end up in jail? And if there is, should they?
I'll tell you for whose ears this is music. It's music to the bankers' ears, because I am severely depressed that the BBC and the bulk of the media is taking this just as the politicians want them to take it, that something needs to be done. Vanessa, these guys have been proven to have committed fraud time after time after time. We don't need anything to be done. We have the laws. You know as well as I do that if you commit fraud, you go to jail.
Yeah, but you just heard the barrister there saying it's incredibly difficult to prove.
No. He was talking about recklessness.
But if it's out and out fraud, that's one thing. If it's playing fast and loose, that's another thing. When you say they have been proven to have committed fraud, what are you talking about? I mean, don't give personal examples, but I mean, what sorts of frauds are you talking about?
Well, I assume you're sort of pretending that you don't know that we know that the bankers manipulated the London Interbank Offer Rate, LIBOR, which is a several $100 trillion market, and that is fraud. Secondly, we know that the directors of HSBC committed money laundering in Central America. We know it for a fact. We know for a fact that they cooked the books up to 2008. We know it for a fact. I don't know about after that, etc., etc. It's in the mainstream media. We all know about it, and yet, how many bankers have we seen prosecuted? Not one.
Not one.
Think about that. There's a problem in the system, and the politicians are playing you guys left, right, and centre, and you guys are taking it. I'm sorry. We need to stand up and realise that they are obfuscating, just like your banker chap that you had in your studio 10 minutes ago, quelle surprise that a banker would be an apologist for bankers. And you asked a question, did the people at the top really not know what was going on? Of course they knew it was going on. They were the guys who were leading it. They were the guys who have made tens, hundreds of millions of pounds, and my children are going to pay for it.
Tell me something,
outrageous.
Jonathan, if we're being played, if we are being played, if we're being gulled or lulled or manipulated by George Osborne, by this report, by the government, by the media, and I seem to be part of the media, I'm certainly not trying to gull anybody or trying to delude anybody or mislead anybody. If we are being played, what is the point of it? What are they trying to do to us?
Well, they have a number of motives. It could be simply they want to make money by hook or clearly by crook. Or it could be the various parts of the media want to sell newspapers or advertising. It could be the politicians who want that greasy pole and who then want a banker job after they leave politics, which of course most of them do, whether you're on the socialist side of things or the other side of things, because let's face it, it was Gordon Brown that created the tripartite so-called regulation system that allowed all this to go on, and of course the coalition have simply continued it. Nothing has changed. Whether you are Labour, Lib Dem or Conservative, you are actually supporting the bankers. That is an astounding thing.
It is also an astounding thing for you to say that those at the very top knew exactly what they were doing and what might happen. Because, for example, I remember travelling on the Underground on the day that Goldman Sachs pretty much bit the dust, and seeing this extraordinary vista of their executives, some of their senior executives, travelling home on the train with their aspidistra, their umbrella stand or whatever it was, having cleared their desks and vacated the building. Now, surely those in charge didn't deliberately set out to engineer this, did they?
Come on. Well, first of all...
Come on yourself. Don't say come on. Yeah, it's true. I did see that on the train.
First of all, you're talking about Lehman Brothers, not Goldman Sachs.
Okay, Lehman Brothers. You're right, I am.
Alessio Rastani, you may recall in the BBC 2.5 years ago, said Goldman Sachs rules the world. Your listeners might want to Google and see the video. So Lehman Brothers. So Dick Fold was the chief executive of Lehman Brothers. Mm. The guy walked away with $300 million. You tell me, what was his motive?
Well, what would you say? I mean, obviously you're ascribing a motive to him, but what would you say it was?
Well, look, these guys were defrauding the system left, right and centre in order to get market share, in order to win bonuses, in order to make massive amounts of money. I mean, one of the things that Lehman Brothers did was every quarter you have to make a return to the regulators to show that you've got sufficient capital. Well, it is alleged on this particular point, I don't know the absolute fact, but it is alleged, maybe it's been proved, that literally a week before the end of the quarter, they would cook the books, the auditors would give it a big tick, and then a week after the end of the quarter, they'd put the bad stuff back into the books.
Jonathan, let me read you this. Let me read you this. This is an email from our listener, David, and David says, "It is churlish to turn the bankers into scapegoats. They're only doing their job and operating within the framework of these money-obsessed times. Instead, we should turn our attention to the economists and politicians who together created the economic model that has led to our country's financial ruin. Anyone else could see that this day would come as soon as Thatcher started selling our nation's assets and her successors carried on doing likewise." In other words, well, I don't need to change the words, but it is churlish to turn bankers into scapegoats, he says.
Okay. In a similar vein to these politicians getting on about the international companies not paying their taxes, ultimately, who was it that created the tax laws? The politicians. The bankers certainly, for a fact, committed fraud. We know it for a fact. So therefore, those guys should be prosecuted and taken down. The other ones who did not commit criminal acts, you're absolutely correct. They were just making money given the system that they were given by the politicians. It certainly was not Thatcher who created all the excesses and allowed regulation to get out of control so that the bankers could do what they wanted. No doubt, Thatcher and her crowd deregulated the financial services industry, but it was Gordon Brown who changed the system so that we had the massive levels of debt and reckless lending over the next 10 years,
Jonathan,
which created the biggest economic collapse in history.
Let me ask my caller Kim to talk to you, and you can respond to Kim. Kim in Lewisham. Hi, Kim. Morning.
Morning, Vanessa.
Okay, tell us what you want to say and see what Jonathan Davis responds to you.
Well, what I want to say is, I think it would be a wrong idea to send the bankers to prison, because by sending them to prison, the taxpayers are going to end up spending more and more money.
You mean on keeping them in prison, you mean?
Absolutely. because you got to feed them, and you got to make sure their health is, good, and every help they need, you're going to have to pay for that to happen. So sending them to prison is not the answer. However,
what would you
what
do
is
with
the
them?
answer then?
What I would do, what I personally would do is, I would send the bailiff to their houses and take all the money away from them.
Oh, how
so
can
they
you
could
do
learn.
that? You can't do that. They don't owe any money. You can't send bailiffs to people's houses.
You can do that if it's proven that they have made mistakes, and if it's proven that they have done this to the economy, then yes, you can send the bailiff to them. And once you send the bailiff to them and they have no money, then there is a chance they will learn where the local food bank is. They will learn where the next food for them is going to come from.
Oh, you know that can't happen. You can't send bailiffs to people's houses when they don't actually owe any money. You can't do that.
No,
you know you can't.
no,
Not go
they do
marching
owe
in
money.
and start taking the record player and the fridge out the door. You can't do that.
Vanessa.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure bankers are well, not all of them now, but most of them would be overloaded.
What do you mean overloaded? What does that mean?
Well, they have enough cash to do whatever they want on a daily basis.
But it's theirs. They've earned it.
Yeah, well, they earned it. I'm not saying they haven't earned it, but they're gonna have to pay for what they did. And the only solution, I think, to pay what they did is by taking the money away from them and let them know what it means to live like people who are thinking, going to the local food bank and say, can I have some food to eat tonight, please?
Yeah, well, that's vengeance, isn't it? Revenge, as we know, a dish best eaten cold, or whatever the phrase is. Kim, thanks for the call. Jonathan, I think Kim, makes a flamboyant point. He doesn't really believe anybody would ever do that. But is he talking sense when he says, really, they should be fined and not imprisoned? Because what we'd really like, and he's quite right, isn't he? Some of the money back.
Yeah. We're never going to get enough money back from the individual bankers. That's in the system now. We're talking thousands of billions, which is thousands of millions of dollars or pounds or euros, which are now just, lost in the system and will never come back. But to suggest that those who commit fraud on a grand scale, bigger than anything we've seen in human history, should not go to jail, well, that is ridiculous. Certainly, and this is the major point I want to make, the politicians are playing you guys. They're trying to get you to focus on the reckless lending. No, we should focus on the breaking of the criminal laws.
It's not going to happen, is it? The report isn't even suggesting
Why isn't it going to happen?
Because it isn't.
If
No one's
turns
suggesting
against
it does
the politicians
happen.
and says the bankers who commit fraud should be prosecuted, then it will happen.
Well, we had a barrister call us to say it's incredibly difficult to prove.
He was talking about recklessness. He was not talking about fraud.
Jonathan, I thank you very much indeed. Always an experience, let's put it that way, to listen to Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth manager.